Iran and elsewhere. We've seen billions of dollars spent. We've seen some alliances rattled by this, global energy prices rising, global economic shocks. Was this war worth it? And to the External Affairs Minister, you mentioned at the beginning the strategic convergence. Can I just ask you about the Iran war in particular? Was that, did that meet the interest of India? And also the role of Pakistan. Pakistan's playing a very strong role with the United States right now. Does India have any concerns about that? Thanks very much.
Thank you. We'll take one more question from this side. Vega from WSJ.
Thank you. Secretary Rubio, some of Trump's own allies, Mike Pompeo, Lindsey Graham, and Ted Cruz, are warning that the deal that is taking shape could give Iran access to more money while leaving it with leverage over Hormuz and deferring the nuclear issue. Are they wrong on that? And for the minister, has the Trump administration shown the same commitment and investment in the Quad as the previous U.S. administration? And what concrete outcomes are you hoping to see beyond statements of support?
So we can take these questions.
All right. Do I go first? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how to address that, but I'll take that very seriously about the comments. Look, I'm sure that there are people that have made comments online and other places, because every country in the world has stupid people. I'm sure there are stupid people here. There are stupid people in the United States that make dumb comments all the time. I don't know what else to tell you other than the United States is a very welcoming country. Our nation has been enriched by people who come to our country, have come from our country from all over the world, have become Americans, have assimilated into our way of life, and have contributed greatly. So that's all I can comment on that in regards to your point. Your second question, there's another question about technology cooperation. Absolutely. One of the reasons why we're such strong strategic allies is because India is a place that's very advanced technologically. You have companies that are on the leading edge of technology in a variety of fields. And you happen to be our ally in terms of country to country. So it is an area of tremendous partnership. It speaks directly to the point that I made a moment ago, and that is you can have an alliance with countries. And we have, we work with countries all over the world on a variety of issues. But there are only a handful of countries in the world where you can actually partner to influence global outcomes. And so India is one of those countries, which is the reason why our strategic alliance is so critical. It's a strategic alliance between two highly capable partners who have industries within our country, private industries within our companies, within our countries, that are on the leading edge of some of the top technologies of the 21st century. So it makes all the sense in the world, two democracies with a lot of pre-existing links, with companies that are on the leading edge of cutting-edge 21st century technologies, partnering together to make sure that those technologies are not just developing and continuing to lead the world in innovation, but are doing so in a way that furthers our national interest. So that is on that point. On the Iran situation, there'll be, I believe, maybe more news coming out a little bit later today on this topic, and I'll leave it to the President to make further announcements on it. Suffice it to say that some progress has been made, significant progress, although not final progress has been made. Ultimately, I remind everybody, and I think this ties into the second question that was asked with relations to it, what is the goal here? The goal here ultimately, the ultimate goal is that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Iran can never possess a nuclear weapon. The President has been clear about that. They will never possess a nuclear weapon, certainly not as long as Donald Trump is President of the United States. Related to that is this issue of the Straits. Okay, this is an international waterway. They don't own it. It's an international waterway, and what they are doing now is basically they are threatening to destroy commercial vessels using an international waterway. That is illegal under any concept of international law that governs us, but it's also if we allowed that to become normal, we would be normalizing an unacceptable status quo and setting a dangerous precedent that could be replicated here in this region and in multiple places around the world. So the desire the President has, his preference, is to find a diplomatic way that these problems can be solved. That's always the President's preference. He would much rather have me and the Department of State solve this problem than the Department of War having to solve this problem. But the problem is going to be solved one way or the other. So we've made some progress over the last 48 hours working with our partners in the Gulf region on an outline that could ultimately, if it succeeds, leave us not just with a completely open straits, and I mean open straits without tolls, and with addressing some of the key things that underpin what has been Iran's nuclear weapons ambitions in the past. So we think we've made some progress on the outline of something that, if it works, could give us that outcome. Obviously, that will require full Iranian acceptance and then compliance, and it will require some future work on negotiating the details. When you're talking about a nuclear program, as an example, these are highly technical matters, and ones that would probably need to be addressed over some period of time. On the issue of benefits that they could get from it, and whatever domestic criticisms there may be, I don't think anyone's been tougher on the Iranian nuclear ambition than President Trump. Understand, okay? Again, I don't know what some of these individual comments have been from different sectors of our politics in the United States, but I will say this: there is no one who has been stronger on this issue than President Trump. Okay. Multiple political leaders, multiple presidents of the United States have all said the same thing. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The only one who's tried to do anything and has actually done anything about it in a real way has been President Trump. So his commitment to that principle that they'll never have a nuclear weapon shouldn't be questioned by anybody. And the idea that somehow this president, given everything he's already proven he's willing to do, is going to somehow agree to a deal that ultimately winds up putting Iran in a stronger position when it comes to nuclear ambitions is absurd. That's just not going to happen. But our preference is to address this through a diplomatic means, and that's what we're endeavoring to do here. I think we've made some progress. I'm always cautious when I say that, because you can agree to things on paper, they actually have to be implemented. You can agree to things in writing, and then you actually have to go out and do it. And, but I do think perhaps there is the possibility that over the next few hours, the world will get some good news, at least with regards to the Straits and with regards to a process that can ultimately leave us where the president wants us to be. And that is a world that no longer has to be in fear or worry about an Iranian nuclear weapon. And so I do think there's some good news on that front, but not final news on that front. But perhaps a little bit later today we'll have more to say. But you know, some progress has been made. I don't want to downplay that. But I also want to caveat it by saying we still have some work to do. We'll see.
Okay, the first question about energy choke points and what's happening between us and the U.S. on energy. Well, I think as I mentioned, there's been actually a very significant uptick in our energy imports from the United States. It's not new. It started out many years ago, but I think it's really picked up in the last year. And where India is concerned, look, this is an era of de-risking, and probably energy more than anything else requires de-risking. So a big country, if you are to do de-risking, looks at multiple sourcing. And for us, the United States has emerged as a very significant and reliable source of energy, as indeed have some other countries. So the way we will deal with the current situation in Hormuz, and frankly going forward as well, which is to diversify our energy sources, because that is at the heart of our energy security. And that is why we feel strongly that the energy market should not be distorted, they should not be constrained. It is important to keep energy prices down for global growth. Regarding your question on the Iran war, in fact, it flows in a way from that answer. Sure, I mean, at this time, where India and the United States are concerned, we both have a very strong interest in ensuring that there is safe and unimpeded maritime commerce. We also have a very strong interest in ensuring that globally energy prices are kept low and that energy sources are more available. So, look, we are both countries. Obviously, each one of us has our own national interest and policies, but partnerships and relationships are built on, what you share, and clearly, in this case, safe and unimpeded commerce and predictable, affordable, accessible energy sources are two very important meeting points. Now, as to who all are involved in, in the matter which Secretary Rubio addressed, I think it is for the parties to work out. It's for them. Regarding the other question on the Trump administration and Quad, I want to remind you that the Quad actually in the current form started during President Trump's first administration. And actually it picked up then, it has moved on, and it was very interesting when I began by saying that, we met on the first day of Secretary Rubio's tenure as Secretary of State. It was for a Quad meeting. And last year we actually had 2 Quad meetings. We are having a third Quad foreign ministers meeting. And looking ahead, to me, the Indo-Pacific is going to become more and more important with the passage of time. We were just talking about energy. It'll even become a big energy lifeline. I mean, if you're going to see, for example, a much bigger India-US energy trade, or India's energy and general trade with the US, with other countries in the Americas, I can see, much more growth, much more trade, much more maritime activity out there. So to me, the work on Quad goes on, and I think 2 days from now, you will see us on the podium talking about the Quad. And I can assure you, we will have a good, strong story to tell.
Thank you, sir. A final round of questions. We'll take 2 questions from each side together, and then we'll request Minister and Secretary of State to respond. Manas from this side.
Secretary Rubio, after 25 years of very significant progress in India-US ties, including during President Trump's first tenure as the president, many in India feel that the relationship has lost the momentum in the last 1 year over issues including tariffs, a more transactional US approach, and mixed signals on Pakistan and China. So how do you see these views, and what is your administration doing to address these concerns about a slide in India-US relations? And to Foreign Minister Jaishankar, what are India's expectations from the Trump administration at this stage of the relationship, when we are also facing the consequences of conflicts, geopolitical headwinds, especially on our energy security?
Reza.
Thank you for doing this. Question for Secretary Rubio. Here, Secretary Rubio. There are serious concerns in New Delhi over the US administration's renewed engagement with Pakistan, and especially Pakistan's military leadership, especially when there are concerns in this region about that military leadership's links with terrorism and also with regional instability. How would you reassure India that this new engagement is not at India's expense? And a question for the External Affairs Minister. I know you've kind of touched on this, but the Quad came together and positioned itself as a platform for coordination between 4 maritime democracies to work on the delivery of public goods across the Indo-Pacific. How much is this still relevant with the Trump administration?
We go to the other side. Tom from BBC.
Thank you very much. Tom Bateman from the BBC. Mr. Secretary, there's a lot of attention at the moment on how to end this war, but there is continued scrutiny on the way it began. Now, it was information about the whereabouts of the Supreme Leader that led to these, unprecedented strikes of unprecedented scale. That was a Saturday in Iran in the morning when millions of children were at school. Now, Admiral Cooper said last week, confirmed the timeline of the investigation into the Minab school strike. There is media analysis that 22 schools at least were damaged either that day or in the following weeks. What do you say to those who will accuse the administration of unleashing a reckless action because of when this war was begun? And Mr. External Affairs Minister, given how hard the energy crisis is currently hitting your country, did you discuss with your American counterparts further sanctions waivers, particularly on Russian oil and other oil purchases? Thank you.
Mr. Eric.
Thank you. Secretary Rubio, I'd like to ask you, there's been a lot of celebration of the role of the U.S. as the world's oldest democracy and of India as the world's largest democracy. As part of this discussion of democracy, what is your view on the continued discussion in the U.S. as to who won the 2020 U.S. election and those who continue to question the result that was certified by Congress? Is that appropriate, and is it appropriate for, or should all sides in democracies accept the results of elections? And Minister Jaishankar, if you could talk about specifically on the issue of energy purchases, Secretary Rubio has referred to the U.S. desire to sell more energy to India. Has India made any concrete commitments regarding purchase of U.S. energy as an additional source, or as India pursues increased diversification? Thank you.
So we can take these questions.
Okay. You want to start with me? I think I wrote them down. So, all right. On the U.S.-India relationship has not lost any momentum. I understand why some people might say that. I mean, I don't understand, but I understand some people say that, but I don't see it or view that in any way, shape, or form. The reality of it is you have a new administration that came in. This is not about India. This is about the United States in terms of trade. Okay, this is not geared. The president did not say, let's figure out a way to create, friction with India over trade. The president came in and said, we have a trade situation involving the U.S. economy that doesn't work moving forward. There's a huge imbalance that's built up and it needs to be addressed. And he pursued it from a global perspective. And so I can tell you as Secretary of State, there virtually is no country in the world that I could travel to that isn't going to raise the issue of trade, because we did this from a global perspective. The president approached it and said we have to rebalance U.S. trade. And one of the reasons why is, again, this is not about India. I'm not speaking about India. I'm speaking more globally. The United States was being deindustrialized. Okay? We pursued trade policies that left us in a place where all of the means of production had been outsourced in such a way that left us vulnerable. That had to change, and it cost us jobs. It created huge displacement in our country. And that needed to be corrected. There needed to be a rebalancing of how we approach global trade, whether, not just with India, with the European Union, with countries all over the world. And obviously, now the difference is India is a massive economy. This is a big economy. We're your leading trade partner. We do a lot of trade with India. And so obviously, there's a big difference between, rebalancing trade with a country of this size and magnitude, with the size and productive means of your economy, versus a smaller country that maybe all they provide is agriculture, as an example. So I think it's just gotten caught up in that. The good news is that through this rebalancing, we are ultimately seek and believe we will arrive at trade arrangements around the world that are good for the United States, but also good for our trade partners. And one of those we hope will be India. In fact, we are on the verge of making that happen. We are hopeful that our trade representative can visit here very soon. We had an Indian delegation in the United States, I believe last week or the week before. We've made tremendous progress, and I think we're going to wind up with a trade agreement between the United States and India that's going to be enduring and is going to be beneficial to both sides and sustainable in a way that addresses this national interest that we had. Beyond that, I would say that we continue to cooperate on a number of fields. As an example, when we came out with a Pax Silica proposal from the State Department, one of the first countries that joined was India. When we had our ministerial on critical minerals, the foreign minister was there, one of our key partners in that regard. It goes and speaks back to the strategic value of our partnership. This is an area of strategic concern for both sides, and we are partnering with it on it. And it's an example of what we wanted to continue to build on. So, in just the last few months, as I said, there's $20 billion of Indian investment in the U.S. economy, and that number continues to grow. So I think the relationship continues to be strong, and in fact, I believe by the end of this administration, it will be stronger than it's ever been. That's certainly our goal, and that's certainly what we're building towards. As far as our relations with other countries, yeah, we have relations, and we work at the tactical level, for example, and in many other ways with countries all over the world. So does India. That's what responsible nation states do. But I don't view our relation with any country in the world as coming at the expense of our strategic alliance with India, for the reasons I've outlined here already earlier today. On the question of the war and look, That was a long question, and it said a lot of things I don't agree with, and I'm not going to speak to military tactics simply because that's not my department. I will say this to you. When this conflict began with Iran, the goals were outlined, and they were very simple. And they were very clear. We were going to destroy their Navy, which we have done. We were going to significantly reduce their ability to to launch ballistic missiles, because that was the conventional shield they were trying to hide behind, and we've achieved that objective. And we were going to do damage to the defense industrial base so they couldn't rebuild all of these things. We've achieved that as well. Those were the objectives of Epic Fury. Those objectives were achieved. Those were the targets of our operation. And that's what they were targeted on. Okay? On the other hand, Iran likes to sponsor proxy groups of terrorists. And these terrorists don't care what they blow up. They blow up anything and everyone. Okay? This is who we're dealing with. Okay? This is an Iran that not long ago, through their Hezbollah proxies, blew up a Jewish center in Argentina and killed a bunch of people. This is an Iran that innovated the use of roadside bombs that killed and maimed a bunch of people, including American servicemen, but a bunch of other people. This is an Iran that has organized the assassinations and the attempted assassinations of people all over the world, including, civilians and dissidents and people they don't agree with. There is no nation on earth that sponsors more terrorism than Iran. And they've spent millions and millions of dollars sponsoring terrorism and targeting individuals all over the world, and including civilians have been caught up in that. Okay? That's what Iran has done. They didn't spend their millions and millions on building roads and bridges and improving the life of their people. That's why their people are always in the street protesting, because their economy has been in shambles, because they don't invest in their economy. They would rather invest in Hezbollah. They would rather invest in the rapists and the murderers of Hamas. They would rather invest in those groups than they do in their own people. That's what Iran invests in. And that's what that's what you should be asking me about. That's what the BBC should be covering. And that's what these other media outlets should be covering, is how evil these people are in Iran and the damage they've done to people all over the world. The world's leading sponsor of terrorism is Iran. And look what they're doing now. They are holding hostage civilian vessels, including ships that have now been stuck in the Persian Gulf. They've laid mines in an international waterway. And yet, despite all of that, the United States remains committed to finding a diplomatic solution to this crisis. But let's be clear who we're talking about here. We're not talking about some pacifist government over there or some pacifist regime. We're talking about one of the most vicious regimes on the face of the earth and in modern history. That's what we're dealing with. And we were going to take away their missiles. We were going to take away their ability to make new ones. And we were going to wipe out their Navy. Imagine if they had a real Navy. What they have now is a bunch of small little speedboats that can lay mines and harass vessels. But they used to have a Navy. Now that Navy resides at the bottom of the ocean. And that was the objective of Epic Fury. As far as the question about democracy, I don't know what, democracy, every country that has a democracy has elections. And in I've been involved, I've seen elections in the United States where Democrats, I remember the lady from Georgia who lost her election in Georgia and said it was stolen from her. The bottom line is you have elections, and elections are conducted on the basis of rules and so forth, and sometimes those rules are not followed, sometimes those rules are not adhered to, sometimes those rules are played around with. Right now, Democrats are complaining about a redistricting process in the United States. But we're going to have elections in 2026. You guys cover it all the time. They're called the midterms. We're going to have elections in 2028. I was elected in elections when I was an elected leader. So at the end of the day, yeah, the democracies, as I said, rely on elections. Elections rely on rules. Those rules have to be followed. But at the end of the day, these are enduring democracies. I can tell you this, the leaders that are in the United States right now, President Trump was elected. He was elected with an overwhelming majority in the Electoral College. He was elected by winning the 7, not 5, but the 7 key swing states. He was elected in 2024 to carry out a mandate, and he responds to the American people as a result of it. And our leaders in Congress are the same. They have to answer to their voters. And that's the key. That's the key, and I talked about it before, the largest democracy in the world and the oldest democracy in the world. Our leaders, when we make decisions on the global stage, we have to go back and justify it to the American people. They have to go back and justify it to their voters here in India. We are responsible and accountable to the people, and they always say the same thing. They want to know why what you are doing on the global stage is good for the people of your country. And that's why I think it's important that there be strategic alliances with the largest democracy in the world and the oldest democracy in the world, because we are two countries that have to make decisions that are in the national interest because our voters demand it, but also that are in our mutual interest. And that's why this relationship is so valuable.
Sir.
Thank you. Well, I have one question on expectations from the Trump administration, 3 questions on energy which sort of overlap, and 1 question on the Quad. So I'll take them in that order. I think, look, where the United States is concerned, the Trump administration has been very forthright.
Well, you've been listening to a live briefing of Foreign Minister Jaishankar of India speaking there now, and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. That US trip to India, all about shoring up energy supplies to India and selling, in Marco Rubio's words, as much energy as India will buy, obviously as a result of shortfalls through the Strait of Hormuz and the crisis over the US-Iran war. We have got more meat on the bones of any potential agreement between Iran and the United States coming from Marco Rubio. He says that we could be hours away from good news, although he said that real progress needs to be measured in the way that any agreement is implemented on the ground. We are getting mostly information from leaks and official briefings of this nature, suggesting that Iran would be prepared to lift its control of the Strait of Hormuz in return for moving discussions about its controversial uranium enrichment program to a post-war period. Let's dip back into that media conference there.
Multiple sources of supply at the most reasonable cost, because at the end of the day, we have an obligation to our people to provide them energy at affordable and accessible rates. Now, what we don't want to see, we don't want to see energy markets distorted. We don't want to see energy markets constricted, because it has a cost implication. So the question which was asked, did we discuss that? Yes, we discussed that. And, I certainly expressed the Indian point of view that, we strongly believe that energy markets should be left, to the market. Where the Quad is concerned, I'm glad you used the word maritime democracies, because both terms, I think, are very relevant. We are doing a lot with each other because we are maritime powers, and I see that growing. And we are doing a lot with each other because we are democratic powers who have a certain way of doing things, who have a certain belief system, who have certain practices. We are market economies, we are open societies. We want business to be conducted and life to run on the basis of international law and market practices. So for us, particularly in the Indo-Pacific, which, as I've already stated, I see as gaining in importance in salience in the coming days, it's very important that the Quad cooperation as maritime democracies continue, and that is exactly what you will see 2 days from now. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we come to the closure of this press conference. Thank you very much for your participation, and I
Well, there we have the end of that joint press conference by Foreign Minister Jaishankar. Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, speaking about the energy tap the US is offering India in the wake of restrictions of energy supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. And more details on what Marco Rubio said could be some good news regarding any kind of agreement between Iran and the United States to end the war. He said that could be coming within a matter of hours.